Mark Stapp.
Gabriel, thank you. Can everyone hear me all right? It sounds okay. Well, unnecessarily flattering introduction, Gabriel, but thank you very much. And it was 2017 that I was here last, just after the fires and before so much that happened in the last few years. And it was about Kierkegaard and Silicon Valley. And now I'm back talking about prison basketball, which leads me to wonder whether there's any topic so arcane that Oakmont Sunday Symposium won't let a speaker in on it. But anyway, I'm glad to be back here. This is the first time I'm talking about this subject publicly. About a year ago, the Plush Democrat ran an article about the volunteer work that I and others have been doing at San Quentin. It was actually written by a guy who was then incarcerated at San Quentin called Rasan Thomas. His name was Rasan Thomas. He's since gotten out and has been in the headlines for a lot of reasons nationally. He was involved while in San Quentin with the Ear Hustle podcast that a lot of you might have heard about. There's a documentary about his running the New York Marathon. And so he did a really nice thing to put together that article that the Press Democrat ran. And now I get to be here talking a little bit about what I saw at San Quentin. It's been a really interesting lens to look at California prison reform and criminal justice reform. It began as kind of a lark, and over the course of 14 years has grown into a lot more. And I should mention at the beginning too, that I see at least one other person who's involved with San Quentin work, Judy Kay, who's involved with the Guiding Rage into Power program there. There's a bit of a community up in the Sonoma, Santa Rosa area of volunteers who are going into San Quentin. There's about 3,000 volunteers who are involved with the prison. So I'm just one of a much larger group. And the work is really interesting. And as we're going to talk about, San Quentin's become the model for the state in terms of prison reform and criminal justice reform more generally. It's been in the headlines a lot. And so glad to be here today. Jeff, I think we can go to the next slide. Jeff, before leaving this slide, this is a photo of, well, I'm kind of in the background there, but it's the members of the San Quentin Kings and the San Quentin Warriors, the two formal basketball programs inside San Quentin. We'll talk a little bit more about them in a minute. Jeff, you want to cut to the next slide? A few facts about San Quentin, a place that everybody drives by frequently, but usually people don't have a reason to stop. Hopefully they don't have a reason to stop in most cases. It's the oldest state correctional facility. It was started in 1852, and it shows it if you go inside. It looks like it's 1852 in a lot of spots. It can house up to 3,000 inmates. At times, it housed more than that. I'm sure everybody's seen the headlines about prison overcrowding. So oftentimes, the California facilities were housing more than they were really intended to house. And that was one of the catalysts for the state looking more seriously at prison reform and criminal justice reform. San Quentin has a hardscrabble reputation, and that was earned for a lot of reasons. Everyone remembers, I think, Johnny Cash going in and cutting an album in San Quentin. There were a number of high-profile riots there. Its rough reputation was deserved. Maybe 20 or 30 years ago, it started to turn the tide on that. And a lot of that motivation came from the inmates themselves. The guys who are known as the lifers, the guys who at that point never expected to get out. They, in collaboration with volunteers and staff, really wanted to create a different kind of facility. And that was the start for San Quentin looking at different ways to handle rehabilitation education efforts that have since made it really the leader in the state and an institution that other correctional facilities are looking to for guidance. And then as we'll talk about, Governor Newsom is hoping to make the model for the state. But I'm going to emphasize it a couple of times that a lot of the change there has really been inmate driven. That's an important thing to emphasize. Jeff, we can cut to the next slide. Just a few points about my background. So I started going into San Quentin as an athletic volunteer. I go in and I play basketball with the two formal teams that they have there. I've been doing that since 2011. I got started doing that because I was playing in San Quentin in some basketball leagues, and one of the guys that I played with was involved with the educational programs at San Quentin. He was teaching writing, and he discovered that our team could get cleared to go in, and so we decided to give it a go. Found the experience so rewarding that what we intended to be what we thought was going to be a one-time occurrence was suddenly a monthly or even bi-weekly event. So we've gotten cleared for 14 years now. In fact, I'm in the process right now. I'm what's known as a beige card holder. I'm able to bring the other guys on the team in. So we're going through all the clearance processes to get our team together, and we'll start season 14 here in a month or so. This was a personal endeavor at the beginning for the first several years. But what's been interesting and rewarding to me is that in recent years, it's become my work at San Quentin, or my volunteer effort at San Quentin, has become relevant both to Sonoma State University and to the city of Santa Rosa, my two jobs. Both institutions are looking at programs to do more to help people as they re-enter into the community. And so the insights that I've gotten working at San Quentin have proven to be helpful. And I've liked how the different worlds have come together. Jeff, you can cut to the next one. A few broad objectives. I'm definitely here not as a prison reform expert or a criminal justice expert. I just want to share the insights that I've gotten from being involved on a first person basis inside San Quentin. Criminal justice and prison reform is a complicated business, as I'm sure everyone in here knows. You've read the same articles I have. So I wanted to be clear that I'm not here pushing a particular kind of agenda or prison reform. The ideas of what to do with corrections and rehabilitation, they span the gamut. People have different experiences with crime, particularly violent crime. I'm going to point to Judy Kay again, who did a wonderful event at Congregation Shomrei Torah that focused on rehabilitative or restorative justice efforts, rather, at San Quentin, where we had victims and we had offenders coming together and talking about their respective experiences. So I want to make it okay for people to have different ideas for what we should do with folks who've committed crimes, particularly violent crimes, and how we re-embrace them into the community. I'm just here to talk about my own experiences, as well as to talk about the influence that San Quentin's programs are having in other facilities. So it seems clear that San Quentin's onto a successful model, and other people are looking at it pretty closely in the state and elsewhere. And then, as I mentioned, there are some impacts for our local community in Santa Rosa and Sonoma County more generally, in terms of how we assist people who are reentering into the community at a city and county level, and maybe new things that we could be doing. Jeff? As I mentioned, there are different ways to start delving into prison reform and criminal justice issues. I like to start with some of the basic facts. And I say facts, but if you go online, you actually start trying to find hard data for how much we spend on our prisons or on corrections or rehabilitation. Even in terms of the number of people that we're currently imprisoning, you're gonna find that hard data is it's harder to come by than you imagine. There are a lot of different estimates for how we are doing as a state and as a country, but here are some stats that come from the middle. From the CDCR's website, just in terms of what we're spending to run our prisons currently, it's about $14.5 billion. That translates to roughly $132,000 per prisoner in the California state system right now. So one thing we can all agree on is that it's expensive and we're spending a lot of money. Even here in Sonoma County, we're spending about $100 million to run our local detention center. That's just to run the jail. That doesn't include the sheriff's department, all sorts of other ancillary services. So again, even here locally, we're spending a lot of money on this issue. Everyone's heard the recidivism rates. These are hard. You'll see a range of these reported across the country and in California, but a rough rule of thumb is that somewhere between 60% and 2/3 of people will return to prison within 3 years of being released. So we're going to spend $132,000 here in California. We're going to let them out. Within 3 years, they're coming back. So leaving aside the moral issues that are in play when we're talking about corrections and rehabilitation, there are significant financial issues. Now, one stat that I highlight at the bottom, and this again comes from the CDCR website, is that if you surround people on the inside with supportive programs, particularly educational programs, that recidivism rate drops pretty significantly. And again, there's a range, but just assume that it's going down by somewhere, it's a third of what it would be otherwise. So you can contemplate the moral issues, the impacts that kind of education and wraparound support has on the individuals and their families and on our communities more generally. but you can also just look at it from a cost perspective. And when we watch a video here in a few minutes, Governor Newsom is going to touch on that, the economic effects of this, of our current system. Jeff, you can cut ahead. Oh, we're gonna watch 3 videos. Jeff, we're gonna watch about the first 4.5 minutes of this video, if you wouldn't mind starting it. And this is gonna, frankly, the experience inside is best presented by the inmates themselves.
I see myself in these young men, and I can remember how I used to be.
It's a family. It's a family away from your home right now.
This is something that I did not have in terms of a positive family when I left society.
It just gives me hope, and I love to see the transformation in these young men.
For me, I've seen it tap into my purpose.
I am today a whole different person than what I was 17 years ago.
How I look?
As long as my eyes are in the right direction.
Got some moisture, you know what I mean?
The spiritual get that quadruple double. All right.
San Quentin Warriors, on your feet, keep them hands clapping to make some noise out here.
The San Quentin Warriors is a team consisted of 12 to 14 inmates. It's a very highly competitive team by my standards. It's a team built on rehabilitation and also player development.
So every Saturday, a team will come down the hill to play the Warriors. Guys from the community, men from the community. Some of the guys have played professional basketball. Some of them will just pick up guys. And some of them, you know, just want to come in and share time with the men.
We practice 2 times a week. We are working out every chance we can get. Every morning at 8:30, we have like a study group. I wasn't able to mandate it, but we came together, and if we're gonna play basketball and be a part of a team, then we should all be inclusive as far as with education also.
It's not just the basketball team, but also the media center as well.
So how excited are you about this year's season with this 6?
Well, now that we got this, I knew we had to get this one today.
All I know, I need my push-ups at the end of the day. The media center at San Quentin entails everything from video, print, audio, everything basically that concerns media. And what it means to the sports program, the basketball sports program in particular, is that we are responsible for covering every event that the basketball program have, especially when there's a big other organization that's coming into the prison, like the Golden State Warriors.
This is incredibly important to me, to our organization. We'll be back soon. We'll beat you again, and we'll have some more fun. Thank you again, everyone.
Partnership between the Warriors and San Quentin has kind of a long and interesting background to it. About 12 or 13 years ago, one Saturday morning, went out and played basketball in San Quentin, had an unbelievable time and really enjoyed it, and decided I was going to be going back for more whenever I could. And after about 2 years of doing that, I was talking to some friends with the team here on the coaching staff and the front office. And we said, you know, what'd be great is if we all went and played together. And so we called the warden, said, would you guys be open to doing this? And they were like, absolutely. So we gathered around our coaches in front office and some of the players and said, anyone who wants to go can. We're going to play against the inmates. And it absolutely exploded.
Drop off with the he goes all the way and count it. Turn around, Jay, put it up and
So we had just an unbelievable connection. I think you learn a lot too about what your life is like and how it differs to other people. And I think that perspective was not lost on any of us from the first year. And then the great part is you hit the court and it becomes just basketball.
Basketball to me in here is a beacon.
We're trying to build men. We're trying to make better men. And we use basketball as kind of like the hook to get the guys, right? Most of the guys on the team, they won't go to a program, but they'll play basketball. So we use basketball as kind of like the catalyst to get everybody there. And then once we get them there, we try to feed them things that they can take with them to society and be better men.
It's about pro-social behavior for me. I left the streets and I was anti-social.
We can stop there,
It's
Jeff.
contributed to me coming to
Thank you. We can leave it up on the screen if you want. So Brian Acey, the last gentleman who was speaking, he's someone I've gotten to know well. He's been running a lot of the rehabilitation programs inside. He and I started playing together. He was a basketball player, but then decided he didn't want to play anymore, and so put his time into the media lab, into TEDx talks, into a range of the other programs, helping again the inmates organize all of the rehabilitation programs in there. A few things I wanted to highlight from that video. The most important one is that, as you could see from the video, the basketball program or the athletics programs more generally are they're one piece of a much larger set of rehabilitation programs inside, but they're a really important recruiting piece. They bring guys into the other programs, to the media labs, to the coding programs, to the degree completion programs, et cetera. So they're a feeder, and they're kind of they help organize the rest of that group. I also wanted to highlight the involvement of the San Francisco Warriors, who exemplify the kind of organizations in the Bay Area that are now participating actively in San Quentin. One of the things that makes San Quentin a little different than other facilities across the state is that it's located in a beautiful spot right in the middle of the Bay Area. It's easy for the San Franciscans and the Oakland folks and the tech folks and the Marin folks to get there. So that's why one of the reasons San Quentin has been able to build up a network of 3,000 volunteers, and you have organizations from the Bay Area that are focusing a lot of efforts there. It's hard to overstate how different San Quentin is from other facilities across the state. If you go to Pelican Bay or you go to Chichilla, they don't have this volunteer network there. And when you step foot inside those facilities, for me, I go to Solano. We've started going to Solano, to Vacaville, to Sacramento. The vibe is very different than what you see at San Quentin. So again, and part of that again is because of where San Quentin is located in the kind of volunteer ecosystem that's been able to develop. Part of the challenge for other facilities is how do they develop in their particular areas? Let me just look at my notes to make sure that I've got. Oh, again, the other point I wanted to underline, which I'd mentioned earlier, is you can tell from the video rather, how self-directed everything is. So you had the video guys interviewing other inmates. You've got the teams themselves that are entirely self-organized. So you've got inmate coaches, inmate refs, running tryouts, running cuts. If you think about your own workplace political issues, imagine what it's like being an inmate in San Quentin and having to run a cut on a basketball team, going up to somebody that you're incarcerated with and explaining to them that they're not going to get the minutes that they expected to get, or they're not going to be part of the program. Imagine, I've seen some of those conversations develop, and they can get testy. We can cut to the next slide. So we're going to do another video here, and this will be a video of that's talking about how Governor Newsom is focused on San Quentin because of the kind of energy that you see here into making this a model for the state.
With Governor Newsom's push to change the mindset and operation of one of America's most well-known prisons, San Quentin.
Yeah, that facility overlooking San Francisco Bay holds 546 death row inmates, representing about 14% of the prison's total population. That's the most of any correctional facility in the country. Now the governor wants to transform it from a place of punishment to a more of a rehabilitation and re-entry program.
It's an approach that's proven successful in many Scandinavian countries, but never in the U.S. at this scale.
Wilson Walker's at San Quentin and explains how the governor plans to make that change.
Built in 1852, this is the oldest prison in California, and at one point held the largest death row in the United States. Now, San Quentin will be transformed, renamed even, as part of a rehabilitation effort that has never been tried on this scale in this country.
Being incarcerated, I would have never imagined having a camera in my hands, learning how to do film.
Among the crowd of journalists covering the governor's announcement, Edmund Richardson and Dante Jones, both serving sentences here at San Quentin, while also serving in the Prison Media Center, one of some 80 different programs offered here, all with the hope of keeping inmates out of prison once they're released.
We're the only incarcerated film crew in the nation.
No one who's been in this media center has come back to jail, right? Has come back to jail or prison, has been rearrested, has got a ticket for that matter, right? So this place is all about rehabilitation, right?
2/3 of folks, Senator says, coming out of the prison every single year, or at least within 3 years, violate some probation order or commit another damn crime. I mean, 2/3, and we perpetuate that system and we call that system somehow public safety oriented. Where's the public safety in that?
The goal is to turn all of San Quentin into a kind of re-entry platform. Death row would be dismantled and entire portions of the prison would be rebuilt for classroom and workshop space for expanded programs.
And they provide the necessary skills that we need to reintegrate back into society.
What if we took this facility, 81,000 feet, I mean, look at this, and reimagined this and scaled the work?
The governor rejected any direct comparison to the so-called Scandinavian model. He talked about a California model that would borrow some of those ideas, but be more tailored to the state's needs.
We want to be the preeminent restorative justice facility in the world. That's the goal. San Quentin is iconic. San Quentin is known worldwide. If San Quentin can do it, it can be done anywhere else.
I hope he comes in. I hope he really does implement this and show that incarcerated people are more than their crimes, and they can do more and have second chances to get out there and be productive citizens.
The news team theater group San Quentin has long been on the cutting edge of rehabilitation programs, so this sort of fits with the tradition here. The next phase will start with $20 million for the planning of the transformation. The governor says he hopes to see some kind of results by the year 2025.
There we go. Thank you. A few points to highlight there. First of all, did everyone spot Mike McGuire behind the scenes there in a few of those shots? So our current senator and state assembly leader, I was glad he made the camera. Secondly, I was a little disappointed that the governor didn't want this to be known as a Scandinavian model, since I myself am Scandinavian. And usually people want to be associated with the Scandinavians, but that's fine if he wants to call it the California model. And then at the end, you heard the price tag mentioned, the 20 million. So what was budgeted last year, again, that was a different financial climate, but about 320 million for a renovation of this facility. And the plan was a bit pie in the sky, but the ambitions are high. And again, the reason that the governor and the state are looking at San Quentin and looking to invest that kind of money is because they're seeing the success that are coming out of the San Quentin model. And you see it even in that short bit of news video footage where you had the media lab there, you had the press there. You can see the kind of vibrancy and the kind of training that's going on inside the facility it is leading to good results when those guys get out. Jeff, we can go to the next slide.
Thinking I'm gonna start cutting carbs. I need to drop my belly fat.
Sorry, my tech is a little rudimentary.
With Governor Newsom's push to change the mindset and operation of one of America's most well-known prisons, San Quentin.
Yeah, I think we're going to come to a shot next of Solano State Prison. We'll leave the videos behind for a while. I'm creating hassles, aren't I, Jeff?
Scale.
Wilson Walker's at San Quentin and explains how the governor.
Thank you for your patience. I don't know how to tap dance or tell jokes. So instead we'll be left with the awkward silence. I'll take a poll in the meantime. I saw one person cheer when District 2 was mentioned. Where are our voters located? Is most everyone here Oakmont? All right, anybody not from Oakmont? All right, there we go. It's a room full of Diana voters. How many folks came to hear Chris Rogers speak last week? Oh, that's great. Chris is fantastic. I'm delighted that he won. My wife and I were huge Chris supporters, but I'm going to miss him on council. So he did, and I heard people liked him. You did a good job last week. All right, back to the regularly scheduled programming. So I mentioned that other facilities are looking at San Quentin and trying to adopt parts of the model. And I emphasized also how different other facilities have been. So the kinds of programming, the kinds of stories that you're hearing me tell or you're seeing reported at San Quentin, you don't go to other facilities and find nearly as many of them. So Solano State Prison is another facility that's looking at San Quentin and saying, how do we replicate that model here? So with our basketball team, they contacted us to say, do you guys want to come in and play a game at our facility? They had some kind of loose intramural programs that were developed. They do have a gym, but they don't have anything like an established league. They wanted us to come in and have us talk about how San Quentin does it and maybe start up help them start up a similar kind of program there. So this photo was taken at our game in December 2023, which was the first time that a team had come in from outside the prison since before COVID. And we are one of only 2 teams that has gone in there. I think they had a local church group that had come in very sporadically, come in once or twice, but nothing on a regular basis. So I can't overstate how happy the guys were to have some new faces come in and play. This is being recorded and put onto the internet, correct? Okay, I want to make sure that the entire community knows that we did win this game, and I played really well. I had like 27 points, and we pulled out a close victory. It was a lot of fun. I want to highlight a few other things here. In the back right, and sort of in the middle back, you see two individuals who were former inmates at San Quentin that I played with for years until they got out. Now these 2 gentlemen they're doing well. They've got jobs, they got places to live. They're coming back into facilities with us as part of our team to play and talk to the guys who are inside. So imagine what kind of conversation that's like and what kind of inspiration, what kind of inspiration that creates. I want to underline how this program is starting to come full circle. And it was interesting because when I first started playing in 2011, nobody ever got out. I played with the same guys every year for the first 10 years or so. Everybody was it was a different era in how the state was handling prison sentences. And then in part because of whether it's criminal justice reform, issues with prison overcrowding, et cetera, the state finally said, all right, we got to do something different. Guys started getting out. Well, now those same guys are coming back in with us and doing great things for people who are, for men who are trying to figure out their journey outside the system. I wanted to highlight one local story here too, because I mean, obviously all of San Quentin's a local story, but especially when you're talking about the inmates, it's easy to be abstract and think about them as people that you won't necessarily interact with. Well, I was caught off guard when, during the course of this game again that I'll remind people that we won, there's a gentleman maybe on the second row back, one over to the right, has a beard, white sleeveless t-shirt. That's Logo Tevasu, a name that may be dimly familiar to some of you. There was a high-profile case in Sonoma County back in 2017. An SRJC football coach was driving under the influence, ended up hitting the car driven by a young Sonoma State student, and unfortunately killing her. He was sentenced to 15 to life. Obviously made the papers. It was a huge story on campus. I vividly remember the campus conversations around the death of one of our own students. So I was playing the game, and he and I were guarding each other. So he and I were bumping up against each other all game long and having a bit of a conversation. And then at the end of the game, I pull on my SSU sweatshirt as we're getting ready to leave, and he sees the SSU logo and he says, "Hey, I'm from Santa Rosa." And quickly it becomes clear that it's Logo Tevasu, it's the former SRJC football coach. He and I didn't know each other, but all of a sudden I knew his story and we had some things in common. So just to put a very very much a local face on the kinds of issues we're talking about. He's in 15 to life for that manslaughter issue. He was a popular member of our community doing good things over at SRJC, made a horrible mistake. A woman lost her life because of it, but he's coming back to our community at some point. I don't know exactly when, but we're going to have to be ready to embrace him. So again, just to make it really concrete what we're talking about here, especially as we turn to the local scene, which we're going to do right now, here's an example of a real world example of somebody who went away, is in the system, but we're going to have to find a way to bring him back. Jeff, we can go to the next slide. And here's another individual story. I'm putting Ula up here because he's somebody that I've gotten to know really well. I played with him. He's still inside San Quentin. I've played with him for at least 10 years. He and I cover each other a lot again, and we spent a lot of time talking to each other on the court. And I think he's helpful as a really good example of the kind of guys that I'm interacting with in this program. A common question that comes up whenever you tell people that you're going to San Quentin or wherever you think about the guys that are in there are, what did they do? What was their crime? And that runs the gamut. San Quentin's maximum security. Most of the guys in there are in there because they had some sort of relationship to violent crime. It's armed robbery, murder. Pick your poison there. If you had to guess, take a blind guess when you're in there, what a really common occurrence is that you had a kid who was gang banging when they're 18 or 19 years old. Drug deal went wrong. Somebody got shot. In Ula's case, he shot some guy in the leg. Got a prison sentence at that time, back in whatever it would have been, the early 90s. His original sentence was 15 years. The state, as people can understand, was concerned with violent crime, especially violent crime involving weapons, and so started to put in place all kinds of enhanced punishment levers on top of the existing sentences. So his sentence went from the original 15 years for gun and assault, shooting somebody in the leg, to I think it's 109 years currently. I mean, in theory, he would never get out. Right. Well, that surprises people, and it also surprised guys like Ula, who were not expecting to be essentially given life sentences for the crimes that they committed at that young age. You can understand why state prosecutors and state legislators thought this was good or a possible policy solution, given their interest in reducing violent crime. But the impacts it's had on the people, on individuals like Ula and their families, there's a cost of that too. And the reason I wanted to mention put Ula up here and talk a little bit about his case is because one of the more poignant conversations I've had inside was talking to Ula one day on the court, hearing about his enhanced sentence, hearing about his effects on his family, and then having Ula tell me that his daughter is now in prison down in LA. So he's up here at San Quentin calling his daughter on the phone and trying to be a parent to his daughters in the system, down in Southern California. Thankfully, he has a son who, as this quote indicates, has gotten out. His son has avoided prison, is doing well, but you can see the multi-generational effects of some of our policies on people like Ula and others. And again, I like Ula a lot and wanted an excuse to put his picture up here, but it's a sad case that Ula is somewhat indicative of many of the cases that we've got inside that thankfully the state is rethinking. There's a reason why a lot more folks are getting out now than were getting out 10 years ago, and this is part of the reason. The state's looking at how it was handling, especially enhanced sentencing and some of its original sentences, and rethinking it to good measure. We can cut to the next one, Jeff. Okay, good. I'm going to feature Judy Kay again. We're going to make her a star for the moment. So Judy and some of the other volunteers at Congregation Shalom Torah did a great restorative justice event about a month ago, where they had there are two people who were victims of violent crime, and then 4 violent crime offenders, all of whom were coming out of Santa Rosa, and 3 of whom I had connection with through the basketball program. So 2 of the guys on stage at Shalom Torah last month were guys that I played with. One in particular, Rafael Cuevas, he was the coach of the Warriors when I was in, so he and I coached against each other. We played against each other a lot. And to have him out, welcoming a new baby into his family, in a good position, in a good position, outside the walls, then coming into Santa Rosa and our town to talk about his experience and be part of the restorative justice efforts here, again, it was just a really wonderful full circle event. The other point I wanted to underline about this occurrence is that I mentioned the recidivism rates, or did I forget about that? Did I mention that I think I forgot to talk about how, in terms of the reduced recidivism, how our group, through our tiny sample size, has seen that borne out. That's right. That was a point I really meant to emphasize. So we talked a little bit about how with the education and the wraparound support, the recidivism rate can really be cut. Well, with our group, the guys that we played against who've been getting out in recent years, we probably have a couple dozen who we knew well, and then we've been able to keep in touch with when they get outside the walls, because this is something that our group has tried to do. Once guys get out, we want to help them get on their feet. When guys get let out of prison, they're given $200 and a bus pass, basically, and they've got some kind of transitional housing, usually in a terrible neighborhood. We don't make it easy on guys who are getting out to get on the straight and narrow. So my group, or the group that I'm involved with, has just in an ad hoc way tried to help with that. We have had only one of the individuals with whom we've been involved go back into the system over the years that we've been involved. So I wish I could say that our recidivism rate was 0. It's not that, but it's very small, 1 out of 20, something like that. Now, again, this is anecdotal. It's a small sample size. I'm just saying that on a personal basis, I've seen some of the recidivism claims play out with the guys that we work with. And here you have 4 individuals, 3 of whom I knew personally. They're out, they're doing well. They got places to live, they got great jobs. Anthony Ammons on the left there, sort of the left middle, he actually was hired by Rob Bonta at the Department of Justice, the Attorney General, to be an advisor for the state. So guys are coming out and getting really interesting, productive things. And here you got 4 real life examples coming into our city. I just wanted to put that photo up because of that. Jeff, you can cut to the next one. A few other facts about what reentry looks like in Sonoma County. So, it's not talked about a lot. You wouldn't necessarily know, but we got about 86 beds in the county for folks who are coming out of incarceration at about 6 institutions scattered throughout the county. So in quiet neighborhood blocks that you wouldn't expect in Santa Rosa and Roner Park and elsewhere, there are transitional homes that men and women coming out of incarceration can use. And those transitional homes, in concert with local nonprofits, are providing all kinds of wraparound services. We probably need more. Sonoma County is starting to do a better job with respect to our reentry support, but there's more we could do. And if you look at we have one official detention facility, and you've got the juvenile hall, which essentially functions as a detention facility for younger folks. Juvenile hall is doing some good things. As part of my work on Santa Rosa City Council, I'm on the Violence Prevention Partnership Policy team. So we have bi-monthly meetings that include juvenile hall, and I hear about the programs they're developing, whether it's different kinds of education advising options, like what we talked about at San Quentin. We're doing it for our younger offenders here in the county, again, with good effects. With our adult detention center, and again, the detention center that we're spending $100 million a year on, not so much. And there's lots of reasons for that, in part because the state didn't historically look to county jails to provide those kinds of services. But now that the state's putting more emphasis on or sending more offenders back to county jails, this is an area that Sonoma County should probably look at a bit more closely. If we're gonna be housing guys, often for men and women, often for years at a time, what are we doing to make sure that when they are let out, they're in a spot to succeed in our community where they are very likely to stay? These are ours. We can cut to the next one, Jeff. I wanted to conclude with a couple of good news stories. So both SRJC and SSU, obviously 2 organizations that I'm pretty well connected to, are doing good things in terms of supporting students who are coming out of incarceration. SRJC has what's known as a Second Chance program, and as we'll see in a moment, SSU we had a version of Second Chance, but now we're upgrading it to a full-scale Project Rebound program. And in both cases, what you're doing with students is you're providing them with very specific kinds of housing support, advising support. You're providing them a community where you've got, SSU, for example, we estimate we got about 10 students who are at least self-identifying as coming out of incarceration. So you're providing a bit of a community background. As an example of what kind of issues formerly incarcerated students will face on campus, imagine going into a college dorm when a typical college dorm, when a condition of your parole is that you stay away from drugs and alcohol. Right? So the sort of recreational marijuana smoker down the hall, that's not an issue, or I mean, probably should be an issue for more college kids, but it's not a legal issue for college kids in the way that it might be an issue for guys who are coming out of prison with parole conditions or past histories of substance abuse. So when we think about individuals coming back and going to get educations, which is something we all want to support, those educational institutions have to be in a position to provide particular kinds of support. And here in Sonoma County, we can be proud that both the JC and the SSU are poised to do that. Jeff, you can cut to the next one. So SSU, a bit of hot off the press good news. In fact, it's not even really like official yet, but the Chancellor's Office is committed to Sonoma State that we're going to get just under $400,000 a year annually to support our Project Rebound program. So we'll have a dedicated advisor plus money to provide the wraparound support programs. We've been angling for this for years. This has been I'm part of a little group on campus that is either currently volunteering at San Quentin or has an interest. We've been working with the Chancellor's Office for a long time, and it's finally coming to fruition. So good for Sonoma State and good for our students. You can go to the next one, Jeff. I wanted to shine a spotlight on Elizabeth Kiraz. So after talking about the good things that are happening at SRJC and SSU, I would be remiss if I did not point out that this young woman here, whom you might have seen in the papers, because she's gotten a lot of well-deserved press, she herself was not only a victim of human trafficking, but also formerly incarcerated, came out of her stint, and at both the JC and then SSU, from which she graduated just a year or two ago, essentially started the support programs for formerly incarcerated students. They're in existence in very small forms, and she really kickstarted them into being much more robust. And she also then founded Redemption House, which works specifically with women who are being trafficked. So she's just doing loads of good things in the community. And we have this one individual who really gets a lot of the credit for what's happening at our two campuses in the area. So good for Elizabeth and good for the symposium, because the honoraria that I am legally not allowed to accept, that's going to Redemption House to support her work. So a little bit, thank all of you. And Jeff, I think we can cut to the next one. Oh, one final video here. We're gonna watch 1 minute of this. And before you click start, Jeff, I'm putting on my city council hat again. I want to talk a little bit about how the city of Santa Rosa is trying to figure out what more it can do in terms of supporting people who are trying to reenter. We want to have job paths available. We think we can do a better job as a city of hiring people with incarceration in their backgrounds. It'll help our need too, because the city has a tough time filling a lot of its high-paying, career positions. And then we're also working with the Juvenile Detention Center, including on this video. Now, the video is meant to support our general plan update. Here I'm getting really wonky. I'm sure you've all been paying attention to the general plan update for the city of Santa Rosa. Well, this video will try to inspire you to do that. We need you to come out to the listening sessions, et cetera. But it was done in conjunction with the Juvenile Detention Center. And Jeff, we're gonna watch about the first minute of this video until we get to until you can see the detention center highlighted, and then we'll stop it.
Because as it's currently
3.5. That's true.
What would life look like 30 years from now? I wanna know. For myself, my town, my family, my child. I wanna know. And as I sit here thinking about this life reimagined in this Santa Rosa dreaming, yo, cause as it's currently constructed, yo, it's hard for me to trust it. Trying to get from A to B with no access to buses. GMO up in our lunches. At the air, I'm throwing punches. Honestly, the whole thing makes me sick to my stomach. And we could really talk that talk, but they don't want to touch it. I want to see like Fanny Lou, so we can discuss it. We can talk about Transform all of the tears dropped in a bucket. If you ask me, the whole thing needs some reconstruction. And it ain't cosmetic or prosthetic. If it ain't inclusive, I don't get it, don't get it. Cause if you get it, she get it, he get it, why can I?
I'll encourage everyone to watch the whole video on their own. But again, just a small indication of how the city of Santa Rosa is trying to figure out how we can do more to support our kids at juvenile hall, folks in the detention center, reentry programs more generally. And I'm gonna stop there. I think that makes my point about how what's going on, what has been happening in San Quentin over the last few decades has really started to ripple out to other parts of the state, including our own area. And with that, I'll open it up to questions, not only about prison reform, but as an elected official in Santa Rosa, I guess I have to field questions about streets and stoplights and all the rest. Ask me anything you want to about the city. And thank you very much for the chance to be here today. This was really fun to be here talking about this subject.
So Lynn and I will be passing around the microphone for any questions. Anybody up here quickly up here? Okay, I see if you can get to Phil over there. Thanks, Lynn.
Yeah, as a fellow Scandinavian, I appreciate the work that you're doing.
There need to be more of us.
And you have quite a group at San Quentin, but there are a lot of people. What percentage of the people do you feel you're reaching? And what do you need to get more to increase that number?
Oh, are you asking about the number of people incarcerated at San Quentin? How many of them are involved with the programs?
People in San Quentin work with a group of them. What percentage of the incarcerated people do you work with? And what do you need to increase that number?
Well, let me answer the question this way, and I hope I get to your point. So when you get to San Quentin, if you're incarcerated at San Quentin, you are strongly encouraged to get involved with one of the many programs that you have there. In fact, for inmates at other facilities around the state, they actively look for ways to be transferred to San Quentin with the understanding that when they get to San Quentin, they will be putting in the work, and this will be good for them as individuals, but also increase their chances of release. So a high percentage of people of inmates at San Quentin do participate in some number of the programs. And frankly, it's more that if they choose not to, they know there's a downside to that. In terms of the people that I personally work with, or that Judy works with, it would be a small percentage of the thousands who are at San Quentin. But it's definitely the case that at San Quentin, everyone's paying attention to the programs. That's just part of the culture there, and what makes it so distinct from other facilities.
Questions?
Incredibly inspirational talk. Thank you very much for that. The cynical part of me, which I try to ignore most of the time, says that often fear trumps hope, and that pun is intended. And I worry that unless this presentation should be given everywhere. That's my feeling, because there's a lot of people for whom they're just going to think in their heads, these guys are going to come out and murder me. I mean, that's where, and once it gets,
they'll lock them up and throw away the key approach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And once it gets into the political scene, nobody looks at the subtleties. Nobody looks at the fact that the Warriors are involved in this is huge. And that part of it, I think, should be pushed over and over because they're very popular.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess when you're in your position, you don't worry about that stuff. You just go ahead because this is the right thing to do and figure it's going to work out and that we're a good state to do this in.
Let me see how I want to address that. I think your concern is justified, and I always want to be. I haven't spoken about this a lot. I'm trying to figure out how I do present it in groups, in larger groups where there are a range of perspectives. And one of the things that I learned very quickly after going in is that while people have different experiences with crime and with violent crime in particular, and so there are nuances to how people respond to the kind of work that's going on in San Quentin. That's one of the reasons that I like to focus on the basic economic issues involved with the way that we're handling our corrections program right now. And you heard Newsom do this the same way. We could talk at length about the moral impact of our current criminal justice system and what we're doing with our prisons. I think everybody has some sense for what those conversations can look like. I'm not sure that everyone has a clear sense of how expensive what we do is and how inefficient. And I think that most people, no matter what their views, most people look at our current system and they see the results and they see the cost and they say, there's got to be some better way. I mean, even for folks who don't mind the lock them up and throw away the key approach, what we're doing right now is really pricey. And if you get into it, is that really the solution? I don't think there's a huge swath of the electorate that really wants to push that point. At least that's been my sense from having this conversation and what I'm banking on by continuing it.
Yes, thank you very much for a very interesting and inspirational presentation. I don't really have a question. I have a comment. For those people who like to read, one of my favorite books ever is Shakespeare Saved My Life by Laura Bates, and she's a professor who teaches Shakespeare in a maximum security prison and the effect that had on the, mostly the inmates were in solitary confinement. So that it's Shakespeare Saved My Life.
Thank you for that comment. And I would say that with the college professors that I've talked to who've gone in and done classes, it's almost unanimous that they will say the best students, the most attentive students are the folks on the inside for whom a lot of what they're discussing is an existential issue for them. Very different talking about guys who see education, see knowledge as their way out of incarceration from your average, 19-year-old who's just trying to, check a box in their transcript. So what you're describing is real.
I noticed that a lot of the inmates are African American, and is the percentage of African Americans in incarceration as opposed to the whole population, say in Sonoma County, is that a problem?
So in Black and brown folks inside the prisons, they're definitely overrepresented. The basketball team, well, this gets into a surprisingly nuanced conversation because you start talking about the race relations inside prisons and how for a long time those were security issues, and to some extent still are because you have gang issues. San Quentin's actually, another point to its credit, it's a little bit different in terms of the way that it's able to have different kinds of interracial activities that aren't always existing elsewhere, where again, you've got a variety of gang and ethnic violence issues that are in play. But to the underlying point about, actually, where did the questioner go? I might have lost him. Oh, way in the back, sorry. To the underlying point, yeah, I mean, you see this in headlines all the time about the overrepresentation of Latino, African American, et cetera. You definitely see it inside, and that's the concern that you see about in the media is real. Oh, Judy.
Mark, thank you very, very much, and thank you for showing Shamri Torah. I do go into San Quentin every week, and I'm part of GRIP, which you mentioned, Guiding Rage into Power. It's an outside nonprofit. But the point I wanted to make is about recidivism, and those men that go through the GRIP program, it's under 3%, and it's a year-long program. So I go in there every week, and I'm dealing with the same 35 men for a year, going through really intensive emotional work, and it's the most meaningful thing that I've ever done. So I just wanted to point out that's just one program of many. GRIP is now in 7 prisons, but we have 3 classes running concurrently of 35 men. And many of them are in lots of different programs. But GRIP is very highly acknowledged by the parole board. So it's a big feather in their cap if they've done the work there. But I wanted to make a point to you. Marin Shakespeare goes into a number of prisons. And I actually go to their performances. I'm not part of their work. But the men actually work with Marin Shakespeare and put on Shakespeare plays at San Quentin and also at Solano.
Funny you should mention that. I did talk to a couple of the guys who acted in the Solano plays. I didn't realize Marin Shakespeare was involved.
I think you're next. Oh, okay. I don't know what rock I've been hiding under, but I was really shocked to hear that a man already in prison and living out his sentence could then be resentenced with all those years added on. Is that really constitutional?
Well, that was the debate. And that continues to be the debate. That's why starting in about 2017, you saw a lot of lawsuits, including ULA, I believe, was part of one of them, but there were a number of legal challenges. I don't actually know, maybe Judy knows off the top of her head. Do you know if all the enhanced punishment issues have been resolved legally, or are those still ongoing? I think it's still being fought out in the courts for exactly the reason that you're intuiting. It seems really unfair to send somebody in for one sentence and all of a sudden say, no, you're in for the rest of your life. But that's effectively what we were doing.
The first part is a comment. We were in Norway a year ago.
Good, more Scandinavians.
Yes. And we got to hear a woman, Norwegian prison guard, who talked about reform in their system. And then my other comment is about, I'm a retired teacher, and I've known kids who have ended up in San Quentin. And most of those kids were either had or a combination of family issues and educational issues. And we were commenting when we looked at your figures up there that we don't spend that much per person per kid for education.
That's a good point.
So it comes down to, do we spend it at the beginning or do we spend it at the end?
That's just, you should be running for, well, not city council, for the school board. What is it about 14,000 a year on California pupils, something to that effect, as opposed to 120 plus for inmates? No, it's true. Thank you for that point.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. Maybe the other person just already answered my question, but I was struck by the fact that the one inmate was proud of his son for breaking the violence. He was outside. He was 28 years old, I think. I just wondering, are there programs in existence to try to help the families of the inmates so that they break that cycle of incarceration?
There are. Judy, you want to talk about that one too?
Judy, you want to come up to talk?
Yeah, you can come co-present, Judy.
No, I don't need to do that. Thank you. I'm not sure I know about programs for the family specifically. I know there are programs. I just don't know about them. What I do know is that I see these men actively trying to parent while they're incarcerated, and they're learning skills inside in terms of how to parent. And at San Quentin, they've now all been given tablets, electronic tablets, and they're a little different than what we're used to. They don't have access to the internet and a lot of things, but they're able to communicate with their family much more easily than they could by telephone. And they're talking to their kids, and they're talking to their spouses if they have them. They're talking to family members, and I hear them in our class all the time talking about how difficult it is to parent, but they're trying to do that. And there are definitely classes for that. Yes, that's my understanding, that they all get tablets. Correct. And that's new, like within the last maybe 6 months.
There's so many changes happening so quickly. The thing that I would add to the issue of the intergenerational effects, and this gets back to the gentleman who's asking about where we were talking about the cost. It's easy enough to have somebody convicted of a violent crime and say, well, I don't care if the rest of their life is ruined. I don't care if the rest of their economic future is ruined. In some cases, that's understandable. But especially once you're in there working with these guys, you see the multi-generational effects. So when you take that guy out of their family and out of that community, the ripple effects, on their kids, on the next generations, on the broader community, they are real. They're hard to quantify, but you can see them even on an anecdotal level, where all of a sudden you've got multiple family generations locked up. Right? What are the long-term economic effects of that for not just the family, but for the broader community? So we haven't done a good job of trying to capture those costs, but they are there, and we need to take them into account, with how we're doing corrections and rehabilitation.
Judy?
I don't see too many folks in Oakmont playing basketball there, but if we knew someone,
Pickleball. You know,
maybe. If somebody wanted to get involved, who would they talk to? What would they have to go through?
It would depend on it would be finding a program that's going in, whether it's GRIP. There would be, there must be, I mean, I know some of them off the top of my head, but Judy, is there a website that aggregates the? Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's, I mean, it's.
Hold on. Can't hear you.
I'll repeat the point. So Judy was just confirming I was trying to remember if there was any kind of aggregation of the organizations that are going in, because there are a lot of different, there are a lot of different groups that are going in for different kinds of educational advising, therapy, et cetera. But Judy was confirming for me that there isn't really a spot, a one-stop shop that you can go to figure out how you might plug in. You got to kind of figure out what what particular area you might want to volunteer in, and then find the organization that's going in to do that. There almost certainly is an organization going in to do whatever it is that you want to do inside, whether that's pet training, media lab stuff, et cetera. There's just a lot of variety, but it all emerged kind of on an ad hoc basis. And so you have to go figure out what organization is doing it, and then contact that organization directly.
I sing with Threshold Choir, and I do know that Threshold Choir has been going in on a monthly basis to sing with the same group of men who are carefully selected to meet with these women. And it's been a wonderful experience. Now, this will be our last question.
Hi, Mark. Thanks for being here. It seems to me before somebody ends up in San Quentin, they would have had some other difficulties. I know at least one of our high schools has some problems. Juvie, it sounds like they're doing some work with film and others. What other kinds of things are happening that can be minimizing the likelihood of ending up in serious trouble?
I think the education comment earlier really covered it. So much of this, I mean, the point that you're making ultimately, or that a few of you have made, is that people don't decide at age 35 that they suddenly want to go into the criminal life, right? They're not, no one's leaving their job at Exchange Bank to decide that they want to give crime a try. This is all set in motion when people are young, and they drift away from their schools. They don't have family support. Suddenly, a lot of it's tied to gang activity, and it's particularly here. This is particularly a Santa Rosa issue. Our gang activity is spiked, and as a police department, as a city council, and as a school system, we're trying to figure out what to do with that, and that's emblematic of the larger causes for for the larger reasons that people end up in places like San Quentin. So that the points that have been made about starting young and finding a way to keep kids from heading down that path, I don't know of a more efficient way of doing it than that.
Well, thank Mark for coming out here. Thanks, Mark, for coming out here on a Sunday morning.
Thank you. This was fun.
And we will not see you next week because it will be Easter, and then we'll see you in 2 weeks right back here at Sunday Symposium.